another element of history they've conveniently helped you forget about. A luxurious form of travel that was promptly removed from our skies.
Airships are the oldest form of air travel. They're the most time-tested. Now, they've been taken out of circulation. A lot of people have the false misconception that if you were traveling on an airship, you would be confined to the little cabins that were suspended from the bottom. You know, like the pilot's cockpit. You'd probably feel a little iffy about those coming down, being on the bottom of the ship. It's coming down, you look like you're gonna get smushed. Well, that big blimp is not just a balloon. In many, many airships of the old world, you had access into that large cavity of the blimp. And there were restaurants, there were bars, there were dance halls, things like this. This is all a matter of fact.
Why would they build such a big thing and not put anything inside? So it's basically like a cruise, but a comfortable cruise where, you know, you're not sitting in the bottom part of the airship where they normally show you on a blimp. You're sitting in the airship. It's a beautiful place.
A beautiful, easy, graceful method of travel, flush down the drains. They're actually safer than airplanes. And what we had was a mass media event in the form of the Hindenburg, which actually scared most of the world's population away from ever getting in an airship again.
It's starting to rain again. The rain had slacked up a little bit. The back motors of the ship are just holding it just enough to keep it from... The first and the flank, get it started. It's right, and it's rising terrible. Oh my, get out of the way, please. It's bursting in the planes, and it's falling on the mooring pads, and all the folks agree that this is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's like 400 or 500 feet into the sky, and it's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the flame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the fans are just screaming around it. I told you, I can't talk to people. There's friends around there. I can't talk, ladies and gentlemen. Honest, it's just laying down massive smoking wreckage. And everybody can hardly breathe and talk and screaming. Lady, I'm sorry. I can hardly breathe. I'm going to step inside while I cannot see it. Johnny, that's terrible. Listen, folks, I'm going to have to stop for a minute because I've lost the voice. This is the worst thing I've ever witnessed.
Oh, no, can't do this. They're dangerous. With the footage of the flaming Hindenburg, you know, falling out of the sky. Nope, no more airships. But there's a lot of evidence, shall we say, that's available to show that, yes, there were airships and they were a pre-existing technology. And one of the ways that they get rid of things is to say, like, it's unsafe, safety hazard, we can't do this anymore.
And I don't want to be flying in that again because there's just fire up in the air and there's no way I would ever travel in that again. So I'd rather pick to be in an airplane.
Let's stick with our helicopters and our airplanes, and we're gonna can airships.
What's a more tranquil form of travel? Airship or airplane? You can't tell me that everyone isn't terrified getting up on that tarmac and taking off on an airplane.
On an airplane, you're stuck. You've got 60 to 100 people stuck on this little plane. You can't travel that far with the tanks that they have. With an airship, you can travel very far, and you can travel with a lot of people. You could take mass amounts of people to these other lands that are much further than we could ever imagine.
The airships of Germany were touching down in Opelika, Florida for years. And Glenn Curtis, the man who opened up that Opelika airport, is a man embroiled in scandal. So if anyone's telling lies here, it's those guys.
Glenn Curtis was nicknamed fastest man alive for breaking top speed records on a motorcycle using gas engines. And he helped push gas as superior to steam and other techniques. He started slapping gas engines on airships too, and he helped get them off of other methods. Then he did the same thing with airplanes in direct competition with the Wright brothers. He tried to steal the Wright brothers' patents with the help of the Smithsonian.
Towards the end, they started filling them with dirtier gas, trying to get them to be gas propelled. That was not the case. Many of these were steam. In some instances, just like a submarine. They can try and hide this from us a little bit, but you, the viewer, can go and look this up for yourself. The blimps were a lot more sophisticated than we're told. And going back to the comparison between airplane and blimp, they can literally and metaphorically bottleneck the costs of travel by only allowing so many people on to this tiny little tube that's traveling so fast, so dangerous. We'll let this go by.
Speaking of modern day airplanes,
You can only fit maybe a couple hundred onto an airplane when you could fit a couple thousand onto an airship. Number one, it's graceful, but number two, you can fit way more people. You can have way more facilities on that. It's almost like a traveling city. So the airships provided something that airplanes don't. They were safer in terms of the speed of travel, the danger of landing somewhere you're not supposed to.
To think, if your fear of flying is caused by open waters, in the case of an emergency, you would now have a way to safely dock on a boat. And a fear of landing could be comforted by a slow docking airship.
Things like the Eiffel Tower, which we were told was built for a World's Fair, but there's Eiffel Towers everywhere.
this will give you an opportunity for a balloon to come in to your city and moor up, and you get straight out, and it delivers you to the place where you want to be. Now, don't think this is beyond the bounds of possibility. They actually did it. Hindenburg used to couple up to the top of the Empire State Building. The doorway would come out, gantry would come out, and everyone would climb out of the Zeppelin into the Empire State Building. And they've done it in LA, in Chicago. These balloons were the transport of the day.
Believe it or not, it was not uncommon for people to fly their airships straight into downtown New York City and to dock those airships in the steeples, in the finials, the towers, the spires of places like New York City, Chicago, major cities in Germany, England, you name it. Airships were docking. They would offload people into the tippy tops of buildings.
I think that there was more than just airships. I think that the technology goes further than that. I think that these things were much more powerful, and I think that they went further than we can ever imagine, to lands that we're not told about.
Behind the scenes, they are still making these, but we wouldn't have access for making our own.
If you wanted to build an airship today, you can't, because NASA owns 99% of the helium. The tech back then was possibly even more than what we have now. There's videos in the 1930s, 1940s of hoverboards and portable scooters that ran off of electricity. They used to have self-parking cars.
Right when photography was invented, you have these electric trolleys running wireless around cities. 20 years later, they'd all be breaking down, then went on to wires, then went on to the slower Edison electric grid.
And remember that they have much, much more than what they're giving us. They are slowly giving us back the technology that was once here, that they found from the previous civilization.
It's funny, right? Because they drop it back in doses, pretend like they're the heroes to reintroduce it. But meanwhile, that very thing that was designed to create freedom and creativity within humanity is now spun to be used for manipulation and control. But it's dropped in those doses where we just accept it, and the line gets pushed further and further and further, and people just sit back and they're just like, this is life.